Welcome back to We Got Options with the Doctor and Son. This is Dr. Latasha McElwain, and of course, my son is Tremaine Green. We are happy that you joined us today. We wanted to just jump right in today talking about relationship, not necessarily just relationships in general, not necessarily relationship therapy, but because I am a therapist, talking about relationships in general is something that I want to talk about also. But I wanted to talk about having the relationship not only just with other individuals and family and things of that nature, but also having that relationship with yourself. So that's going to be the focus of our podcast today, is talking about relationships. So Tremaine, I'm sure you are ready to kind of jump right into this conversation about relationships, talking about how we actually have those relationships with other people, and then also how we have relationships with ourselves, which is something that a lot of people don't think about, having that relationship with themselves. Almost like I talk about self-love, self-care, self-determination, all these different things I talk about when we're talking about ourselves. A lot of times we don't think about it, and it's not the top of mind, I would say. What are your thoughts, Tremaine?
Um, well, whenever we're dealing with like ourselves, I mean, we got some like when you think about it, it's sometimes your brain want to do one thing, but your body tell you no, you can't do that.
Hmm. Yeah. So a lot of times we, kind of put ourselves also, I wouldn't say, well, yeah, I would say we put a lot of things before ourselves too. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
As in, we think, oh, I'll get to it later. Oh, I'll get to it later. But when it comes to ourselves, if we keep putting ourselves on the back burner, we're going to always keep putting ourselves back there, and then we're going to find out that we're not taking care of ourselves, and we're going to have all kind of other issues going on for the most part. So, in talking about relationships, I have come across, well, actually, I came across this book 20 years ago, and it is a book by Dr. Miles Monroe. He was an international motivational speaker as well as a minister. He was also one of this book was one of the best-selling books, and he is a best-selling author and business consultant. He was a pastor and the president of the uh, Bahamas Faith Ministry International, that was in Nassau, Bahamas. And I came across this book earlier on in my career. While I was actually going through school, my mother-in-law brought me this book because I was actually having a lot of troubles in my marriage, and we were considering the whole having a separation. And so she gave me this book. I really was struggling during that time, and this book was a big help to me. And in having the book the first time around, I started using it when I went into practice, into private practice, and the book was very helpful to some of my couples. But then after a while, when I stopped fully practicing and doing more other administrative type work for the most part, this book came back to me again. And when this book came back to me again, I said, I know that book. And I remember how much success I had on it when I was first doing therapy earlier on in my career. And it was a great book to have. I went ahead, I reordered the book, and started rereading the book again. And I believe I read it maybe two or three times when I had it the first time, but reread the book a few times again from then to now. And every time I read it, there's something good and something new that comes out of it. So the name of the book is Single, Married, Separated, and Life After Divorce. It is again by Dr. Miles Monroe, a best-selling author. And this book speaks volumes about a lot of the issues and concerns, and a lot of the good things that come along with being in a relationship, even if the relationship is with someone else or if the relationship's with yourself. So I like to say, even if the relationship with someone else, because yeah, you could be in a relationship with someone else, but then also the relationship with yourself, and then relationships in other aspects of your life also. You gain, learn, start to understand some nice information that helps along with the journey of being in a relationship with yourself, with other people, in different scenarios that come up in life. So, with that being said, I wanted to talk about this book. I wanted to share a little bit about this book because it just makes sense when we're talking about relationships. With me doing a lot of relationships counseling again, I am definitely interested in having individuals read a book such as, and when they read the book, really start to think about, where they are and where they can end up being by just taking some of the tools and some of the techniques that are stated in this book, which to me is pretty much a lot of common sense. But he does go into some biblical stuff when he's talking about this book also. So the first part of the book starts talking about basically being single. So there's a myth with being single is what he states in here. And basically a lot of times people think that being single is a problem. Like singleness is a problem. And I can recall that I grew up in a family where singleness was a something that was not greatly looked upon in my family and where I lived as well. Everyone was ready to get married. Many of us young ladies or young girls, we had relationships where we were kind of locked down since age 13, 14 with the same guy. Or, it was just very interesting to see how it played out as I look back and reflect on it. But singleness was something that, people act like it's a problem. And I think society still says today that singleness is a problem. However, what happens in this book is it starts talking about, the view of being single, and it gives a really good idea about, what singleness looks like or what it actually means. And it basically tells you that, singleness is being unique and being whole. So basically, if you are a single person, you are a unique person and you are a whole person, meaning that you are kind of pulling all those things together to be a separate, single, unique, whole person. I like to take it a step further and say, if you are a single person, you want to kind of have had that time to get your stuff together. Meaning, I want to get emotionally together. I want to be financially together. I want to be on top of my career together. I want to be in if there's any traumas from my past, I want to kind of deal with those things. I want to be working on those things. Sometimes when we talk about trauma, we talk about hurt and things like that or abuse. There's the things that'll probably be with you for the rest of your life, but being able to emotionally handle those things, those are some big things to think about when we're talking about being single, and being by yourself. That's always, I think, something to consider. Tremaine, what are your thoughts when it comes down to me talking about, being single and really having yourself put together well, if you are a single person, especially if you're a single person going into your late 20s and 30s, as a single being, not being married and being kind of, on your own. What are your thoughts?
Um, well, first of all, it's never a bad thing because how can you push for a relationship with another person if you're not comfortable in yourself at any point?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't see it, if you can't be comfortable with yourself, how's another person supposed to be comfortable with you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's basic. I mean, that's basically it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to come to that point where you're okay with yourself, and but also have the willingness to improve yourself
Right. Right.
before you even get into a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because
Absolutely.
because if you're not willing to improve yourself, you might as well not be in a relationship because that's something that will be asked of you eventually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the things that the book does actually state is that, when you see a marriage counselor, whether you're seeing a Christian counselor or you seeing a secular counselor, 99% of marriage problems basically they come up because a husband or a wife, the both of them pretty much have not seen themselves as unique. They have not seen themselves as, uh, a worthy individual, and they have not, they have a pretty much a bad self-image of themselves. They are not really seeing themselves as a whole person, you know? So that is something that that is something that really resonated with me as I read through it, because I'll be honest, when I went through my divorce, one of the things that I was saying, I was going through my separation, I was saying that I felt like I didn't know what were my likes and my dislikes anymore. I felt like I didn't have any interest in anything. I felt like my life revolved so much around my husband and my children that I couldn't figure out where to pick up the pieces. So I say that to say, I am certain that I wasn't the only one feeling that way. Of course, being a therapist and realizing that I've worked with so many couples over the years and so many individuals talking about relationships over the years, I know for a fact a lot of people feel that way when a relationship ends, whether it's a long term relationship or a marriage. People do feel like they've lost themselves, So that is a big part of when we get married. We want to be able to, or when we're single, we want to be able to take care of ourselves and handle a lot of those, I would say, emotional things, financial things, self-fulfilling things that you want to do. Some people say, oh, I'm single, I want to travel before I get married. Travel, it's just things that you want to do, I tell individuals a lot of times, just, keep on working on yourself, because, there's a great, I think, scenario when it comes down to a person being fully in their singleness. And that means that you feel worthy. You feel like you have good self-image. You have that good self-image of yourself. You feel like a unique person. You feel like you have likes and you have dislikes, and your likes and dislikes won't be, um I guess, overshadowed by someone else's likes and dislike. And then also being in a scenario or a situation where all of a sudden you're trying to like oysters because your husband likes oysters. Well, it might not work out for you, that you might get sick or something. You know what I mean? I'm just using that as an example. But Tremaine, I think you get where I'm coming from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So anyway, striving to be single is a big thing. And I think being truly single is one of the things that I want to say that people don't necessarily run to in life, because society doesn't really give us the opportunity to run to that part of life of being single, or being in our singleness. Once we get to a certain age and a certain, years in school or college or whatever the case may be, and after we graduate, we start having these pressures of when you're going to settle down with someone. Oh, when are you going to get married? Oh, when you're going to have kids? We start having all these societal expectations. Again, we talk about expectations, but a lot of these societal expectations come into play, and it plays out in a lot of families. What are your thoughts on that, Tremaine?
Yeah, I mean, it's very different from a man to a woman in that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Because as a man, it's not that is the family thing is not really expected of you,
Mm-hmm.
but it's when you get into that family life that the expectations become put upon you then.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, you even know you're not sitting here telling me like, hey, when you gonna get married? When you gonna have kids?
Oh no, absolutely not.
And but it was never like that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I'm a guy, and I mean, it's the pressure's not there. But if I were a girl, it may have been completely different.
Oh, totally understand that. Yeah, yeah. And girls' pressure is a little bit different than boys' pressures, I believe. You know,
Yeah,
rather
I like,
whether
oh
society or whether people want to state it or not, it is different.
yeah, yeah, it is. I mean, it is. I mean, because like we put so much pressure on girls to just go out there and get that family,
Yeah.
where yeah, we don't put the pressure on boys until they already have a family. Then they have a honor bound duty to that family.
Oh, that's a wonderful one.
But I mean, in my opinion, I'm like, well, I think you gotta love that family first. You know, I think you can have a family and not, and have that honor bound said to you, said that, oh, like, you got an honor bound thing to your family. But I'm like, no, the heart's gonna want what it wants. When you want something, you're gonna go out there and get it.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I'm like, so you gotta love your family just on just you have to love your family in general to even have that feeling of, oh, I want to like do the right thing by them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's not something that's just gonna come because you got a family.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And I think another thing to think about is that, the book also starts talking about loneliness, being alone. And I think for the most part, people look at the word loneliness and really, there's some different definitions for loneliness, of course. But I do think that people really do get into their heads when it comes down to loneliness because, the three major foundational definition for loneliness is exclusive, isolated, and solitary. So when you have someone that is exclusively to themselves, I would say, if you say someone is isolated, and then of course the state of being in solitary, these are individuals that are really able to focus on their uniqueness, they're separate, and them being whole, being a whole person. I think that, and he does state in the book that the keys are single but not alone, which makes sense. Thus, it is possible to be single and not alone. So to be single and not be alone or not have that lonely feeling is probably what the major goal is. You know what I mean? Is that you can be by yourself. And my whole thing is I tell people, is it okay to be by yourself? And 9 times out of 10, 99.9%, I get no. A lot of people can't be by themselves.
Well, I mean, that has something to do with I think society fascination with romantic feelings,
Mm-hmm.
and you're not valuing your relationships that aren't that aren't that aren't specifically romantic.
Mm-hmm.
You're not valuing your friends. You're not valuing all all the other things in your life that you're taking it all for granted, and like you believe you're alone in the world when, oh no, you can have people around you. They just might not have the romantic feelings.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
think we've over movies and everything else in society has told us, oh, you want that romantic love, you want that love. That's like the thing that you should be working toward.
Yeah, and I
And
think people don't.
oh,
Yeah,
okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and I think people don't realize that love can be more than just that romantic love. Love can be just an emotion of the fact that you love the world, you love the sun, you love the grass, you just love being the fact that you're alive. You love, you know what I mean? That level of love. I can remember being talking to someone one day and I said, I love you to the person, and the person was like, you can't love me yet. And I'm looking at them like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I'm not talking about loving you romantically, loving you. I mean, love you as a person, love you as I love my car outside. I love the
Yeah,
door. I love, you know what I'm saying? It's just I'm grateful
yeah,
that we're friends and I love you. Like not that I love you like that. And I think that's where we go with people. And that was a
yeah.
50-year-old
That's
person.
our yeah. That's our initial thoughts whenever
Yeah.
anybody says anything like that,
Yeah.
and we put too much emphasis on the word love that it is kind, and that's not what the meaning of love is.
Correct. Correct. And so, like I said, it blew my mind that that was what the person was thinking. I was like, and
Yeah,
you're 50 something years old. What are we doing here?
pe-
Okay.
people are pretty presumptuous when it comes to that because that's all media and everything has fed them. So what are you expecting?
Exactly. Exactly. Well, with that, we'll go to a commercial break and we'll be back and we'll talk more a little bit about loving yourself. And hello, this is Dr. Latasha McElwain with the Green McElwain Foundation. I have teamed up with osjourneys.com for a wonderful health and wellness retreat in Belize. Our dates for the retreat will be May 21st through May 27th of 2024. There's going to be luxury accommodations. There's going to be a whole lot of time to be able to reflect on things and finding your inner self. The health and wellness retreat will focus on just breathing, just being able to breathe. That is the mantra or the outcome of many individuals nowadays looking for a mind, body, and soul rejuvenation, restoration, and retreat. Come join us. You can get more information at osjourneys.com for travel and for the retreat in Belize. Come join us. And we're back with We Got Options with the Doctor and Son. And today we are talking about Single, Married, Separated, and Life After Divorce, a book by Dr. Miles Monroe. And this book, we have already started talking about the single chapters here. And I think what will happen is we will actually break this into some different podcasts, and this will be our first one regarding singleness because I think there's a lot to talk about here and there's a lot to unpack. So when we're talking about singleness, a lot of times the big part of what happens with me working in therapy and just working in general, just talking with people, is figuring out this whole thing. I always ask people if they love themselves. And I always get a fluffy answer like, of course I love myself. But then when we start getting into some of the more personal parts of individual self, that's when we start getting the real answers that sometimes people don't love themselves.
What
When
we
we,
fail, I think what we fail to see in that is, I'm sorry,
yeah,
what we
you're
fail to see in that is, that self-hatred is everywhere.
exactly. And that's why I dig deep. That's why I dig deep. I tell people when I say loving yourself, I'm not talking about being self-centered. I'm not talking about just self-love. I'm not talking about just the pride. I'm just talking about the self. I'm not talking about just those things. I'm talking about really taking a deep dive into who you are as a person and do you love yourself. And there is a lot of self-hatred. Like you said, Tremaine, there's a lot of self-hatred that goes hand in hand with people really just thinking, oh, I love myself. I would never do anything to hurt myself, but a lot of times we do. There are things we do to hurt ourselves. And those things can be from all different aspects. People will say, oh, well, no, I wouldn't try to hurt myself as in, commit suicide. But that's not what I'm asking you. I wouldn't harm myself as in cut myself. That's not what I'm asking when I'm asking this question. The question I'm asking is, do you love yourself? And then trying to go into more greater details about what it is to love yourself and what do you do to show yourself that you love yourself? you know and a lot of times it is a hard pull for a lot of people to be able to give me those answers.
Hmm. Those are I mean, to like, because people don't understand the true question of loving oneself. Because the thing is that most of most of us have grown up around, other people, and we come up with the ideal of what somebody would envision as perfection. But that's
Mhm.
not what people are looking for when they talk about, you. But
Right.
you are beautiful in your own way.
Exactly.
You can
Exactly.
treat people in your own way. It's not the fact that you have to look like this or have a specific look about you or anything necessarily special that you see.
Hmm. Exactly. And so for me, I like to tell people if we talk about taking a deep dive into self love is a big part of being in your singleness. And that is something that we're going to really jump in more of in more segments of talking about this whole book, Single, Married, Separated, and Life After Divorce. But it is a great start for relationships. And like I said, I just wanted to jump in and give us a few snippets here so that we could really be able to finish out more of the research and the understanding and the different things that comes from this book as we're going through the next few podcasts we're going to have, because we really want to jump in and just be able to help people understand what it's like to be single and what we should be kind of striving for to be single and be in a full relationship with ourselves before we start to commingle and want to be in relationships with other people, especially romantic relationships. So does that kind of make sense, Tremaine?
Hmm.
Okay. All right. So with that, we are going to go ahead and we're going to end this show for today. And we will come back and we will continue on with the conversation about relationships, single, married, Separated, and Life After Divorce by Dr. Miles Monroe is the book that we're going to be kind of utilizing along with some of the different things that I typically would do in therapy. And Tremaine's going to give his feedback about relationships and his feedback about singleness and all of these good things. And I think we're going to have a great little series here regarding relationships. So, as always, thank you so much for joining us today for our show. And we hope to hear from you and see you soon when we are doing our podcast and when we're doing some on location that's coming up soon. So we are hoping that everyone will come back and join us for our relationship series. Thanks so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. Hi, this is Dr. Latasha McElwain, and I would like to introduce my first book. The name of my first book is Fragile Brokenness: The Unspoken Secrets That Shape a Pretty Unprotected Girl into a Practicing Clinician and Therapist. My key phrase is, when life gave me lemons, I gave life a doctor. I hope this would be an inspiring read for everyone, with inspiring experiences and heavy experiences that will bring about the importance of being self-aware, dealing with traumas, and being focused on your mental health wellness. The proof is in the journey. I hope you enjoy my book, Fragile Brokenness: The Unspoken Secrets That Shape a Pretty Unprotected Girl into a Practicing Clinician and Therapist. Sales begin December 2023.